Hello, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. Welcome back to Hausfrau Friday. This is a regular weekly segment where I discuss the overlap of domestic skills and sustainable living. Today, I want to talk about how our family, mostly me, because I am the financial planner for the family, how we save and plan for large purchases. So a significant portion of managing a household is managing the finances, managing the budget. And for us, we are 6 individuals on a teacher's salary, plus the little bit that I bring in from blogging and YouTube. And we live in a very expensive part of the country. Obviously not as expensive as California, but Portland, Oregon is a very expensive place to live. So we have to be extremely judicious with the pennies that we do bring in. I've always been very, very good with money, and I credit a lot of that to my mother, who taught me how to budget and encouraged me to think frugally and responsibly. And I also credit it to the book, Your Money or Your Life, which I read at 18, which really shaped my financial philosophy. We do not go into debt at all, except for our mortgage and the few times in our life that we have had medical debt, which we have paid off. That is not a luxury that most folks have, but there are ways that you can mitigate and reduce the amount of debt you may have to take on. And a significant way that I do that is that I pay myself a payment for future large purchases I know I'm going to have. That has been one of the most successful financial strategies I have found to help our family live within our means, avoid crises when expensive items break or need to be replaced and we've not prepared for it, and prevent the need to take on debt. So let me explain a little bit how it works for us. I'm going to put this into context a little bit here. We've had a number of large expenses lately. The first one being that our dog Apollo needed to have his toe amputated after weeks and weeks of expensive medications, many kinds of medications, and vet visits trying to save his toe. He had osteomyelitis, and once there's an infection in the bone, that's it. It's not going to recover. That was a very unexpected and expensive veterinary cost that was necessary. Now, we have standard poodles. They are rescue dogs, and Apollo is the first male standard poodle we've ever had. We've always had females before that, always rescue dogs. And poodles are really susceptible to a condition called bloat. They are a very deep-chested breed, and males in particular are extra deep-chested. And that deep chest allows for a particularly strange quirk of anatomy to occur sometimes, which is where the dog, after consuming a meal, the stomach is rather pendulous in this deep abdomen. And if they exercise or wrestle, what have you, when the stomach is full of food and hanging low, it can actually flip over on itself and get basically a stomach torsion and pinch itself off. The resulting condition is called bloat, and it is an emergency life-threatening situation that requires an emergency surgery. Since I know that poodles are prone to this condition, especially male poodles, the moment we adopted our dogs, I started saving a bloat fund. I try as hard as I can to anticipate emergency expenses that may occur and make myself a payment every month in my savings account in a way that dedicates those funds toward that upcoming emergency cost or upcoming anticipated cost. Now, my savings account is not physically partitioned. It's mentally partitioned. It's partitioned on paper, where I may have money in my savings account, but I know that it is earmarked for a specific purpose. I may never spend that bloat fund, but it needs to be there because our family could not afford to charge $4,000 or $5,000 of emergency veterinary surgery on a credit card. We would never be able to successfully pay it off. We would just continue to accrue interest. And I do not want to be paying credit card companies interest. And I don't want to be paying them interest on interest because interest compounds. So when you're looking at a credit card and you're looking at the potential for 13 to 25% interest, we cannot afford on a limited budget to have that kind of extra expense. It is all I can do to squirrel away a set amount every month to self-insure. When you pay yourself a payment for emergency costs, potential future expenditures, you are paying yourself a payment instead of paying the credit card company a payment. The benefit is that when I pay myself a payment, I get to keep all of it if I don't spend it. And there's no interest. I don't have to charge myself interest. When I pay the credit card company, I have to pay them obviously the balance and obviously also the interest. And again, if I don't pay it all off, there becomes interest earned on the interest, and it spirals very quickly. So the average American has about $40,000 in consumer debt. That's not including student loan debt. That's not including your mortgage. For us, being able to pay ourselves a payment and self-insure and plan ahead whenever possible has meant that we don't have that kind of consumer debt. We don't have any credit card debt. And being free from the burden of having to make monthly payments, being indebted to a credit card company, I cannot express to you the amount of freedom and the sense of relief of being able to pay for something and be out from under debt from credit card companies. This method of saving has meant a lot of self-sacrifice for our family. There may be money in my savings account that I have earmarked for replacing our roof, replacing our water heater. I had a video last summer where I talked about how we had to replace our water heater because it was from 1992. I knew it was going to die, and I had been paying myself a payment every month in anticipation of needing to replace it. So then when it died, lo and behold, sitting in my savings account is the full amount I can write a check and buy another water heater. Being able to save this way takes a tremendous amount of privilege, but it is a strategy and a skill that if you can employ it, it is immensely helpful in not only being able to live on a much more limited income, but also being free of the burden of having debt, the psychological burden, the endless stress of constantly being in debt. And we have had medical debt in the past, so I do know what that feeling is like, to feel like you don't know how you're going to scramble to pay a bill. I know that not everybody can do this. Some folks are living paycheck to paycheck, and for a number of years we were doing that. But getting to a point where I can anticipate future expenses, I can sit down and make a spreadsheet and say, like, what are the things I know I'm going to need to replace in the next 5 years? And what are the things that are emergencies, like dogs having bloat, that might creep up? And how can I save? How much do I need to squirrel away every month for that? When my friends are like, why can't you come with us to California for the weekend for a vacation? How come your family doesn't take more trips? How come you guys don't eat out? How come you say you can't afford to go to this concert or XYZ? It's not because I don't have that money in savings. It is because I have the self-discipline and the training and the financial wherewithal to say that money in savings is already dedicated to another purpose, and I cannot spend it on entertainment. I cannot spend it even on something necessary, like the fact that I'm driving a 20-year-old minivan on its last legs. I have not yet saved up enough to replace that minivan. So we drive a really worn down car that we're driving it till the wheels fall off, because I know that I am not going to buy something until I have saved up for it. It means that I have to forego a lot of things that I think a lot of American consumers feel like are necessities or feel like they can justify spending. That doesn't mean we're poor. It means overall, I have more freedom in my budget. I have more money to afford high quality things because I carefully save ahead of time. It is such a different way of thinking about how we manage our money than the way that our consumer culture tells us. Just charge it, just put it on plastic, and think about it at the end of the month. Let me give you one more example here. Yesterday, my computer died in a blaze of sparks and smoke. It's only 14 months old, but it's 2 months out of its warranty. I was working on a blog post and it went black. And when I tried to boot it back up, it refused to boot back up. And so I was thinking, maybe there's a battery problem. It's completely dark. There's no power that's going to it, at least from the lights. So I took the back off and I plugged the computer in and I tried to boot it back up. And the motherboard just started sparking and this horrible stench of burning electronics and a little wisp of smoke came out of the back of it. Oh, that's the end of my laptop. That was it. It's been a string of problems from the beginning, so it was not worth trying to repair it. And I thought, well, crap. I had not planned on buying a new laptop for at least 2 more years, if not 4 more years. And so I've not yet saved up enough for that expense. what am I going to do? And I actually crowdsourced on social media. Hey, what should I do? What should I do to replace my work laptop? I have to work, I have to blog, I have to make YouTube videos. I need this for my job so that I can have income to pay my mortgage and other things like that. And it was interesting to me to hear folks say like, oh, you should just buy, this $2,500 laptop, or I think you should spend this amount and you should get this, and this is the high-powered machine that you need. And me thinking about the bigger picture, and I was talking to my best friend about it, and she was saying, most people don't think like you do in American culture. Most people don't think like you're looking at a $2,200 laptop. What most people think is, Apple tells me that payment is $94 a month or however much it is. I can afford $94 a month. I can definitely afford this laptop. And I hadn't really thought of it that way because I'm always thinking about the big picture and I'm always thinking about the total cost of something. And I realized when she said that, forgive me if this is naive, but I realized that most American consumers probably don't think that way. Well, what do we do if we have these unanticipated expenses and we haven't saved up enough yet? It can be so tempting to just charge it and think about it as those monthly payments, not really processing the fact that if we're just making the minimum payment, we're never going to get out of debt. And if we're just making the minimum payment, we may end up paying 25 or 50% or more, 100% more for the item in the end by the time we pay it off because of interest. For me, the option is not to not buy something this time because I need a laptop for work. If I could possibly delay the purchase until I could save up, that would be the ideal option. But since it's not, what else can I do? Well, I could look for something used or refurbished. I could look for something that is not my ideal, but makes sense for me financially. And this is where I think both paying yourself a payment until you've saved up for something, which means foregoing other luxuries, or it means doing without something until you've saved up for it. And it also means foregoing, treating yourself to things. It means foregoing those kind of entertainment things that maybe your friends who are in a different financial situation can afford to spend on. Or maybe they're in a worse financial situation than you and they just charge everything and they don't really think about it. When we decide to only buy things that we can afford, that makes sense financially without taking on debt. For me, I, of course, am immediately crowdsourcing. Where are the places you guys go for used equipment? Where do you go for those budget options? I'm trying not to be tempted by the just charge it on a credit card and pay it off later. Think about it later. The key for us and living within our budget and being able to self-insure, pay ourselves a payment, is not looking at what am I doing in this immediate moment? What are my needs right now? How can I charge it and then think about the consequences later? Instead, it is turning that consumer culture on its head and saying, actually what I'm doing is long-range planning, thinking about what I might need in 5 years or 10 years or what I might never need, but if I had an emergency, I would be prepared for. I'm not a prepper. I don't talk on this channel about prepping, but there is that element of being prepared for the worst. Self-insuring, especially if you know your income is low enough that you could not weather an unanticipated expense. You could not weather a disaster or a crisis with a large bill unless you had planned ahead and saved a little bit every month. So instead of thinking about that payment that I will owe, and I'm only thinking about the monthly payment that I'll owe the credit card company, think about what is the monthly payment that I could pay myself. And then drop it in an account and keep track of how much is there, but also if there is some way you can tell yourself that money is off limits. I can't use it on a vacation. I can't use it on any kind of unnecessary spending. I can't use it on any kind of spending except the thing that I've saved for. For example, again, one more quick example. 3 of my 4 kids need braces. 2 have had braces and 1 is going to need braces upcoming. Braces are like $5,000 when you have insurance. They're very, very expensive and something that for my kids is a necessity. I know that when I sit down at the orthodontist, I'm not going to have that money. I know that I don't want to do a financing program and pay her interest. However, I've known since George was born, because of his older siblings and because my husband and I both had braces, this is an expense we will probably have. So once we got through the phase of our life where we paid off medical debt for our other kids and we paid off our student loans, and I suddenly had like a little bit of extra money every month, that goes in the braces fund. That's something I know he's gonna need in the next year or two. That money just gets dropped in there and I forget it. I don't get to take that money and spend it on something else. It is taking that discipline and saying, this money is only for this purpose. It does not exist except for this purpose. I realize that this is something that is difficult to do on many levels because it bucks the way our consumer culture works. It is impossible if you are living paycheck to paycheck, and we have been that family that has lived paycheck to paycheck, and that has not been possible for large periods of time. But now that it is possible, even if I'm just putting $10 or $20 a month away, if I'm thinking about, well, a car payment is $200 or $300, I have no idea how much a car payment is. Car payment is X number of dollars a month. If I pay myself that payment for 5 years, I will then be able to just buy a car outright. That for us has been the most successful strategy for us living within our means and being able to afford a lifestyle where the bulk of my work is unpaid as a homemaker and as a homeschool mom, and we can live essentially off of one income. Until last year, my YouTube income was not enough that it wasn't paying anything. This strategy has helped us live within our means, avoid taking on debt, and also freeing up all of the money we would have thrown away on interest to have available for other things, like buying a shed that we really needed for the garden, or things like occasionally being able to treat my kids out, like taking my daughter out for dumplings to celebrate her starting college. Oh, hi, Athena. I can afford to do that. When otherwise that would have been money that was just dumped into a credit card company's coffers that is literally thrown away and is doing me no good. So again, I know there are situations in which folks cannot spend this way, they cannot save this way. And I don't mean to imply that if you are in debt or if you are struggling or you can't afford to squirrel away money in savings every month, it's your own fault because you aren't doing this, because that is not what I am saying. I'm saying this is a tool in the toolbox to being able to live on a more limited income. This is a tool in the toolbox of being able to stay out of debt and to tell consumer culture, I reject your notion that the way to live is to buy things spur of the moment when I don't have the financial resources and to think about it later and pay a heavy cost in terms of interest later. So thanks for watching Hausfrau Friday. I'm gonna probably have a little follow-up video to this coming out later, but this video is running awfully long, so I'm gonna leave it here. I hope that you all are staying well and safe. If you have strategies for how your family lives within a budget, I would love to hear about it down in the comments. Thanks.